Welcome back. Read between the lines. Decoding the top 10 body language secrets is the subject of today's podcast. And today's podcast, the real intent of it is to help you really drill down. Again, we're trying to give you the little nuanced differences between the agents and humans that consistently win versus those that needlessly struggle. And if you've been listening with intent over the last probably couple months, you'll see that we've really taken our podcast content to the next level because more than ever, well, I'm not going to say ever, I'll reframe that. More than any time in the last, say, 12 years, skills matter most now. Before, sellers were selling because they won the Willy Wonka golden ticket. Buyers were buying out of FOMO. Interest rates were low. All of these things that made the market so that there was so much exuberance and so much momentum. Skills took a back seat. All of that is pivoted. Now this is a skills-based market. So we're going to be getting more into the weeds about the tiny little nuanced differences that make somebody have that je ne sais quoi, that secret, almost superpower to winning business while other agents don't.
That's right. And this pertains specifically to face-to-face. We're going to talk a little bit about Zoom, but especially face-to-face, because I was thinking about when I was writing this outline, how much of the relationship before that initial presentation is just online or texting, or you don't really meet somebody. And a lot of people are a bit uncomfortable on that first face-to-face meeting.
Okay, well, face-to-face, we know statistically, and you'll remember the number, I'm sure, but something like 90% plus of all consumers choose the first agent that they meet with. Meet with is not going to be a lead from Zillow. Meet with is not going to be a text or an Instagram message. Meet with face-to-face. That's the reason, again, that so many agents who have really mastered the art and science of doing open houses, they're following our open house system, are dominating this marketplace. Because when you're meeting with someone face-to-face, even if they have 6 bazillion online conversations going on with 6 bazillion other agents, if you're the first one that they actually feel connected to, guess what happens? You're their agent.
And that's why body language actually matters. So point number 1, and it's interesting, I was looking at the manners book for Zoe. This applies to kids too. I'm going to go over all this with the tiny human as well. So number 1, maintain eye contact. Do keep consistent eye contact to show confidence and interest in the person sitting across from you. Example, when speaking with a client, maintain eye contact because that builds trust. Here's what you don't want to do. You want to avoid staring, which can make people uncomfortable, even if they have a funny haircut or you like their glasses. An example, also, glancing away occasionally shows that you're not trying to intimidate. So there's a balance between that. What I see when I observe people messing this up is they're either breaking eye contact because they're looking at their phone, or they're looking at who else is around if they're meeting at a coffee shop or something like that. They look impatient. They're not concentrating on the person in front of them.
They're doing things that would lead you to believe in a subconscious way that you're not interested in what they're saying to you. You guys have been in situations like this before. Now, remember what Julie just said. Staring at somebody without blinking makes you creepy as hell. Let's just throw that out there.
Stalkery.
So you're really clear. But when you're looking at somebody, don't allow yourself to be distracted like a gnat on crack, right? Mm-hmm. Because then they're going to feel that they want to get away from you, and they're not going to like you on a very core level because they perceive that you don't like them. Otherwise, you'd be listening to what they were saying. So do keep eye contact, and also if you do want to look away, which, those of us who are more introverted by nature, Julie and I, for example, don't look down. And don't look like, if you look down on most people, and I'm going to get into the weeds here a little bit, Julie.
Sure.
So if you look down and you're a man, you're talking to a woman, she's going to feel sometimes a little bit uncomfortable because of just different things. And men will feel uncomfortable too. Maybe a man's super conscientious of his belly, and all of a sudden you find yourself looking down just because you're wanting to break eye contact, and you're letting you're giving yourself a little bit of a break. When you let your eyes meander down, you just made that other person uncomfortable because they now perceive that you're judging them based on something that they're wearing or whatever, right? That's just how the human brain works. And it's not a conscientious thought, it's a subconscious thought. So if you want to give yourself a little break, do what Elon Musk does, and do it I'm not saying Elon's the world's greatest communicator, but do what almost all the world's greatest communicators do. They look up. They look up over the person's shoulder. They don't look at other people. They don't look down. They look up, almost like they're looking almost to the stars for guidance as to, how incredible this conversation is going, and they're listening. They'll look up, And sometimes what great communicators will do is they'll shake their head in acknowledgement while they're listening. Practice this. I know it's contrived. It is, of course, until you start doing it and you make it part of your natural way of communicating.
Well, you'll get a feel for how much is the right amount of eye contact. What you don't want to do is look too distracted or uninterested. I see a lot, like, women's magazines, right? There's a manners column. And one of the most common things is, I like to go out to eat with my friends, but they just can't put their cell phones away. How do I bring that up? And the coaching on that is always to say, hey, is something going on that I need to know about? Because is that more important than our conversation? Nicely and politely. Show interest in the person in front of you.
But Julie, you keep on bringing these points up, so I can't let it go, right?
It's okay.
So if you are working with folks older than, say, 45, they did not grow up with the idea that looking at your phone is anything other than rude. I'm sorry, it's true.
100%.
So if you're talking to someone and they're even, their late 50s, early 60s, and you're glancing away at your phone, I 100% guarantee you're not going to feel connected with them. Well, they're not going to feel connected to you. So again, if you want to have a nuanced, unfair advantage in the marketplace, listen to what Julie just said. When you're in social settings, even when you're in line at Starbucks, it does not matter. Put your damn phone in your pocket and forget it's there.
Also turn the ringer off, because that can be just equally as annoying, right?
Yeah.
So, yes. Okay, now I want you to talk, because you do more Zooms than I do. What about me? Eye contact in a Zoom situation. Are you looking at the camera? Are you looking at the screen? Are you looking at the little square lineup? How do you handle eye contact on a Zoom?
Well, I always look at the camera. And I always look at the camera, even if the little, Brady Bunch squares are off to the side.
Yep.
I'm not looking at the person looking at their camera or looking under the screen. I'm looking at the light, and I'm making it so that I'm making eye contact with them. And that's the main thing. And also I just remember all the basic things of communication, People are going to judge you by your facial expressions. And so when I'm on a Zoom, and Julie's right, I do a lot of those every day for EXP primarily. But when I'm on a Zoom and someone's talking, I don't just sit there and listen. I don't check my email. I don't look distracted. I'll shake my head in accordance with what they're saying, so acknowledging what they're saying. And I'm not going to say anything. I'm just going to shake my head. If I'm in a Zoom with a number of other people, that's what you're going to see me doing. I'm going to look a little bit like a bobblehead in slow motion, because I want them to know I'm engaged. And I'm looking at the camera, and I'm listening to what they're saying. That makes a world of difference, because people feel listened to. What human nature will tell you is what people want more than anything is they want acceptance. They want acknowledgement. They want to be made to feel important. And the easiest way to do it is just don't be rude.
Yeah, don't eat on camera. Don't drink on camera. Don't blow your nose on camera. Be sensitive, because people showed up to that meeting for a reason. Even if other people are having bad behavior, set the example.
I mean, imagine if you were this is before cell phone era, right? You're at a social gathering and there's maybe 50 people there. And the whole time you're talking with this person, you're glancing around, looking around the room, looking for it's just because maybe you don't like to make eye contact and maybe you're just nervous yourself and social gatherings are the worst thing ever for you. But the way they're perceiving it is you're bored of listening to what they're saying. You're not engaged, and you're looking for somebody else that you can then, meander off to and talk with that other person instead.
Yeah, what is the message you're sending with your body language? That's what we're talking about. Point number 2, sit up straight. Maintain good posture by sitting up straight, which conveys attentiveness and professionalism. Sitting up straight during meetings shows you are attentive and serious, and I think it shows confidence as well. Don't slouch. That can be interpreted as a lack of interest or lack of energy. Example would be being mindful of your posture to avoid appearing unprofessional or bored or sleepy, anything like that.
So the big the lack of inventory right now that's happening in the marketplace is big because of one thing. If you don't believe me, you can listen to Logan Modeshami from HousingWire. It's millennials. There's more people willing to buy houses than ever. Now, why am I looping this into Julie's last point? If you're a millennial yourself and you're competing with other millennials, and let's say you're in a meeting environment or whatever, and all the other millennials are acting like it's, maybe they haven't listened to our podcast, they're slouching, they're on their phones, and you really want to make a difference to say you're Generation X or your baby boomer boss, Julie just gave you the cheat code. Put your damn phone down, sit up straight, be attentive, listen to what they're saying, don't interrupt them what they're saying. When they say something and it's your turn to talk, say, oh, that's interesting, and then ask a follow-up question. That person will love you, and they're going to say, oh my gosh, Julie is so much more attentive and dialed in. And you're all of a sudden going to have that, again, je ne sais quoi, which is French for this little special something that the people can't quite, put their finger on. But, somehow Julie's got that special thing that everybody else wants. This is how you do it. You can learn to have that skill set. Learn to have that energy, and then people will assign you the positive characteristics and qualities of that person that you want them to think you are, which means eventually you become that person.
Exactly. You act like the person you wish to be treated as. So we're talking about sitting up straight and things like that. What about on Zooms? How do you handle adjusting your chair, your camera height? How much should you worry about lighting? Give a little take on that.
Obviously you want to sit up straight. What I do is I make myself slightly uncomfortable and I'll set the chair in so I can't slouch. Because some of these Zooms I'm on are just, agonizing. And so I'll just make it so I have to sit up straight. I am sitting at a table, and guess what? It's rude to put your elbows on a table. So I make sure that I don't put my elbows on the table, just little tiny things. I know that most people will never see that I'm taking those little extra steps, but I am. And by thinking about how I can actually become more professional and do a better job presenting, and what that does is it forces my overall, I would say my nature not to be complacent. So if I all of a sudden start, slouching a little bit, screwing around on my phone, have 5 windows open while I'm on some sort of, Zoom or some FaceTime or whatever, they're going to perceive that as me not being quite as professional. And again, this is a skills-based thing that a lot of people take for granted. Or even worse, they don't think it's important. And you start losing more than you win, and you're wondering why. This is probably one of the many reasons, is because you don't take this type of thing seriously.
Well, I think what I'm hearing you say is if you want to have better focus, look like you're focused, act like you're focused, and then magically you will actually be focused. Right?
Again, because they're going to feel listened to. They're going to see that you made the effort. Like when I'm on Zooms, half the time I'll put on a sports jacket. Everybody else is in t-shirts. I can be on a Zoom with a whole bunch of people that are like mega rich, talking about some investment opportunities Julie and I are thinking about, and they're wearing their hoodies and their t-shirts. Hell no, I'm wearing a jacket because I want to show respect. And maybe they don't appreciate it, but 1 out of 20 does, and that's the one that I'm obviously trying to appeal to.
Very well said. All right, let's talk about number 3, handshakes. This is something that people need to be practicing, especially post-COVID when we weren't supposed to touch each other, right? So do give a firm but not overpowering, not bone-crushing handshake to convey confidence. For example, a firm handshake can set a positive tone when meeting a new client. Do not have a limp handshake, which is perceived as a lack of confidence. You can practice the right grip to avoid appearing disinterested.
Now, here's what, definitely you guys know this if you travel at all. The handshake versus fist bump. In markets that are a little, say, the bluer states or the bluer cities, and I'm sounding political, but I'm just telling you my experience, they're going to want to do the fist bump. If you're in more conservative communities, they're going to do the handshake. But here's the funny thing. If you're in the more conservative communities and you do the fist bump, they're still going to want to shake your hand. But the opposite is not true. If you're in a more liberal environment and you try to shake their hand, they're not going to. They're going to repel. So there's a little bit of a difference in how people behave based on our own experience.
Know your market.
Know your market, right.
That's right. Okay. Now, smiling. This is something that comes up a lot. Smile to convey friendliness and approachability. A genuine smile when greeting clients can create a positive first impression. I think you and I both can name people who are naturally a little bit more smiley.
So let's combine this one and last point. Okay. So when you're going up and you're meeting with somebody, there's the handshake. But then there's sometimes you can learn, it's kind of fascinating, kind of not fascinating. So you're shaking with your right hand, you're shaking their right hand, and then you put your left hand on their shoulder or on their lower arm. Again, depending on the environment. But the other thing you can do is you can put your hand on their hand. So if you're shaking, Julie and I are going to do it right now. If you're shaking hands and I put my other hand right on top of their hand, that actually shows a little bit more of a connection. And they're not going to consciously know you did that, but subconsciously they're going to feel that you might really like them. Now, again, adjust accordingly because you might be in an environment like if Julie did that and if she was in a certain environment, those men are probably, or women, I suppose, are going to maybe take that not as intended. So adjust accordingly.
Very well said. Now back to smiling for a second. You want to be generally friendly and avoid forced or fake smiles. You can practice with yourself in the mirror and see what the difference is. I didn't get into the weeds on this, but people have analyzed the tells for fake smiles because a real smile shows a little bit of crow's feet in the corner of your eyes. Sometimes your eyebrows go up, and a fake smile is like just your mouth. So be careful with that. Now, Zoom specific, nodding and smiling shows that you're listening, you're engaged, nodding along with the conversation. You can give a thumbs up. Anything else you want to add to that in terms of like your facial language on a Zoom?
Personally, I think that a lot of people look down into the Zoom, and if the lighting's wrong, you see up their noses. I mean, I don't want to get vulgar.
I've seen those too.
But what you want to do is you want to put your Zoom, if you're just using your computer, put it up on some sort of like a book or a small pedestal so that you're looking directly into the camera. Now, that said, a lot of the Apple computers, the camera will digitally adjust whether you're looking, what feels like you're looking down into the camera. It actually adjusts so that it's almost as if it's already on that pedestal. So go and test to see what it looks like. And as far as your lighting goes, lighting is important, but really I'll give you a little clue. Actually, I'll tell you guys a story. So Julie and I are in the gym 2 years ago here in Dorado.
Oh, I know what you're saying.
And Ricky Martin's in there working out. And when Ricky's in town, he lives in our neighborhood. He lives probably about 10 minutes from where we live.
If you don't know who he is, Google them.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Exactly. I shouldn't have assumed. Yes. Anyway, so Ricky's there. He's like a world famous, like super mega star. In his era, he was probably like Elvis. Super, super cool, nice guy. And so when one time we saw him and we went up to him and, we asked for a picture with him. Okay, so this was during the COVID era when people were still wearing masks in the gyms and whatnot. So I went up there and he positioned me. He was taking the picture with Julie. Some of you guys might remember this picture from Instagram. So he actually directed me where to stand so the light was right. I mean, he was not going to take a picture with, a dumbbell. I'm not saying you. I mean, like an actual dumbbell. We were in the gym. Yeah. Unless the lighting was perfect. Okay. Yeah. And so he actually told me, so here's what I learned from old Ricky Martin. He's younger.
He's our age, so.
Yeah, so I shouldn't say old, right? All right, so don't have the light at your back. Have the light looking at your face, all right? And so we pivoted, and sure enough, all of a sudden, all the little wrinkles that would have showed up on everybody were no longer there because the natural sunlight was coming in. Now, how does that apply? Because if you're going to be setting up your camera or you're going to be setting up your computer and you're going to be doing Zooms, and I have news for you guys, with the advent of AI, you're going to be doing a lot more of this virtual communicating. And fortunately, AI is going to then start creating these videos for you. In other words, your AI is going to be you presenting, you to a prospective buyer or seller. So all of this stuff is going to be valid because it's going to need really crisp video of you in order to, simulate you. But you want to put the camera in front of you. There's so much information about how to do this properly on YouTube. I certainly don't have it mastered yet. But it does matter, and because you don't want to look like you're, you don't want to look any, grungier than you probably already look. You don't want to look like you're talking in a dark cave. You got to be conscientious of your background. Just all these silly things that everyone should have learned during the Zoom era. You want to tell them a funny Zoom story?
I don't know which one you have in mind, but go ahead.
Okay, so Zoe had to go to online Zoom school for 2 years.
Yes.
And so they tried to put all these little, 5 and 6 year olds.
This was first and second grade, so they were like 5.5 to 6.5. Yeah.
Yeah. So they had to put all these little, kids on a Zoom class. And of course, the kids had never been on Zooms before. They all missed their buddies. The teachers had never been on Zooms before. And all the moms didn't know what the hell to do. So they just plopped their little kids in front of their computers. And basically, you could tell where the kids weren't being watched. So Julie and I are walking past Zoe. And it's like, Brady Bunch. There's like, maybe 10, 20 pictures.
There's like 12 of them, yeah.
Yeah, okay. All on the screen. You guys know what I'm talking about. All right, so here's what we saw. We were watching above Zoe's shoulder. She didn't know we were there. The boys were sticking their butts in the camera and mooning each other. And then the whole damn class, we're all doing this at the same time.
Entertaining each other.
And the teacher was just blah, 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 blah. She didn't even because she wasn't there she wasn't looking at the cameras to see what the kids were doing. And then the kids also had figured out how to hack their virtual classroom, had all these chats going on.
There were so many rules that came from that. You weren't allowed to change your background except during morning meeting. You weren't allowed to black out your screen and show up 2 hours later pretending that you were in class. You weren't allowed to be upside down in your chair, aren't allowed to moon each other. I mean, it was a dumpster fire, man. But they eventually did get it together. So yeah, don't take your Zoom manners from your children.
Yeah, well, thank you for looping that. I was just trying to make them laugh. But right. do choose a virtual background if your background is not going to be something that's going to be conducive to a professional environment. Do consider all these types of little tiny differences. And what people will do, and I see them doing this when I'm on a Zoom too, is they'll look around, just, try to learn more about you. So maybe you have some things in your background. They're going to be things that are going to want them, reinforce them wanting to do business with you. By the way, all of today's notes are available on our newsletter. So if you've not subscribed to that, the good news for you is free. And even better news, it's daily. It includes all of our daily podcast notes. Just go to harrisrealestatedaily.com. harrisrealestatedaily.com is our free daily newsletter where all of our podcasts live, as well as a lot of other additional free content for you. So just go to harrisrealestatedaily.com or scroll down below to click the link below.
All right. So back to our body language tips and tricks here. Use open gestures. What do we mean by that? Use open hand gestures to appear approachable and honest.
In life, not just on Zooms.
That's right. Thank you for clarifying. For example, when explaining a concept, use open palms. That indicates transparency. Now, what you don't want to do is cross your arms. That can be seen as defensive or closed off or disinterested. Keep your hands visible and relaxed to appear more welcoming. That's something you can change today. Avoid crossing your arms.
By the way, these things, especially anytime like waving or showing your hands, when you're showing your hands, it's thousands of years old gesture going back to like original man to show that you didn't have a weapon in your hands. So when you're communicating, you want to also like talk with your hands open. But then this gets into the weeds of some of these, NLP stuff, which Julie and I have never studied. People have accused of studying it, but we honestly never have. But again, the NLP stuff gets a little contrived in our opinion. That's the reason we've never studied it before. But there is some interesting little characteristic things that you probably already have, and you just maybe want to embellish them. And if maybe they're good, maybe they're bad, and you don't want to embellish them, the arms crossed. If you don't know what to do with your hands or your arms and you're in a public space, just put your hands behind you. Prince Charles is famous for this. Mm-hmm. But really the main thing is don't cross your arms. Don't do anything to wall off your body because it looks like you're disinterested.
The other thing that usually goes hand in hand, literally, with the crossing of your arms is if you push your chair back, it's like you want to get away from that person. And that can lead to this next one. And I think they're related. Number 6 is respecting personal space. Maintain an appropriate distance to respect personal boundaries. For example, in a business setting, keep a comfortable distance to ensure mutual respect. This is something that does drive me bonkers with certain people. Avoid standing too close. When somebody's like all up in your space, that invades your personal space, it can make people uncomfortable. Be aware of cultural differences as well with personal space preferences. You can usually kind of read somebody if you're standing up and they keep on taking a step away from you. Maybe they're either intimidated by you or you're just in their space.
That cultural different stuff, that is there's so much. If you're, okay, I'll give you an example. We had a coaching client that was starting to do a lot of business with people from the Middle East. And in certain cultures in the Middle East, if you show the bottom of your feet, it's considered to be a disrespect. In certain parts of Africa, I think, if you shake with your right hand, it's shown to be disrespectful. All these little nuanced differences you have to be aware of. I'm not saying they won't do business with you if you're not aware of them, but what I'll say is they'll definitely appreciate the fact that you are respectful to their culture, and most likely you'll get the business versus someone that doesn't have the skill set.
That's very well said. Very good points. Okay, so next is an easy one. Observe facial expressions. Pay attention to people's facial expressions. They gauge reactions and emotions. Noticing a client's frown, maybe they're confused, maybe they're thinking about something else, maybe you need to clarify your points. Don't avoid those subtle facial clues that can lead to misunderstandings. Be attentive and also control your own facial expressions. Some people are better than others at that.
Micro expressions is what Julie's talking about. So here's the interesting thing. Very accomplished liars and spies and sociopaths can fake micro expressions. In other words, they know you're subconsciously trying to read them based on their micro expressions. Fortunately for you, chances are you're not going to run into a spy anytime soon, and hopefully not a sociopath anytime soon. So when you see and you perceive somebody's facial expression, chances are you're reading it correctly because people can't fake it unless, again, they're trained. So when you're picking up that someone's, disinterested or interested, or somebody's overly curious, or somebody's whatever, trust your intuition, because your intuition, the more you trust it, the stronger it gets. A lot of analytical people, Julie was like this when we met and we got married, she wasn't ever trained to trust her intuition. She was trained to be very analytical. And so as a result of that, over the years, she began to trust her intuition more and more. It's not that she didn't have it. It's not that she didn't have a strong one. It's just that it was a muscle that had never been really, trained.
Well, that's true. And I appreciate you pointing that out because I was thinking about yesterday's podcast where we were talking about pricing property and how I used to do the CMAs. One of the things I used to look for, because I tend to go deeper than, some with analytical. I can nerd out, right?
Yeah, use the words.
Yeah. Well, I would pay attention, though, at listing presentations. If I saw certain facial expressions or they started to cross their arms or they leaned back in their chair or shoved their chair back, I was losing them. I was going too deep. I needed to reel it back in and be more direct, get that train back on the tracks. But I had to be sensitive to that with certain people.
Well, it's, again, a lot of that too, Julie, if we're being super honest, is ego. Because
Sure.
you're trying to impress them with your knowledge. I've been on Zooms before with other people, and we're talking to, like last week, I was talking to somebody we're talking about this big broker with like 3,000 agents that wants to move over to EXP. And the person that brought the opportunity to EXP was one of our partners, and I was helping this person. This person was not being attentive to the things that we're talking about. And so the broker who was making the decisions wasn't interested in the finite details, but this person who was doing the presenting of the slide presentation loved the finite details, and their ego wanted to impress everyone with how intricate and detailed they were. And so as a result of that, I was perceiving that the person that we were, obviously trying to work with to move over to EXP was losing interest. And the other person wasn't paying attention. So I texted the person and I told them to shut up because they were losing the interest of the person that we were supposedly trying to build interest with. You guys get it? So you're going to have to, forgive yourself for your natural tendencies. I'm the exact opposite. Like Julie's a more detailed, drilled down person to this day. Duh. You guys can probably perceive that from listening to the podcast every day. Whereas I will sometimes not be attentive enough to the fact that they want more detail. And in those sales environments, Julie would immediately know when I was going too fast. And she would then drill back down and really focus in on whatever details maybe she thought I didn't drill down enough on in the first place.
Well, so what's the balance to that? Eventually, we came to settle in on being prepared to drill down, but not having to.
And very rarely do you have to.
Rarely do you have to, but every now and then we'd be in front of a seller who, did what they wanted to hear all of my CMA stuff, and they had their own spreadsheet.
What we realized over time, and we're hoping you guys realize this as well, is the skills give you confidence. Knowledge equals confidence. Ignorance equals fear, right? But really what people want to feel, no matter what their dominant personality trait is they want to feel connected to you. They want to feel that you care. And if you can't convey that, if you can't create that emotional connective tissue, it does not exist or is not dominant in your personality, you better sure as hell learn how to develop it, because even the most skilled based person who does not have the ability to actually, communicate effectively and connect with people, they're not going to make any money because no one's going to do business with them. Not because they're not amazingly knowledgeable, but because they did not take the time to learn the skills to connect to other people. And by the way, that is an ego problem.
It is. And one of the only ways you can overcome that is to actually go on more appointments, even if and when you're uncomfortable.
Well, obviously coaching too.
And coaching, for sure.
You need someone to call you out on your bullshit, because we're not talking about something completely different, which is, normal for us.
Yeah.
But when I when I used to do production coaching, when I used to do 50 to, some weeks I was doing 73 one-on-one coaching calls per week, not per month, per week, right? So I had, that many coaching clients. And so I had to basically there was no screwing around on my coaching calls. I had a full day, 8 to 12 coaching calls a day. I was locked in. I was getting my job done. I had to deliver the most value for every one of these people. But every one of these people had different, every issue was different. Every person was different. So I had to be really good at going from one conversation to the next. And one of the things I found almost always was the most effective way to be, like when I was communicating with it was almost always a man in his 40s and 50s, who was a know-it-all type, who was an analytical know-it-all type. And basically, they were only going to communicate the way they're going to communicate, do business with who they're going to do business with. And I'd always ask them this question. So I want you to describe your best friends to me. And a very introverted, analytical person will have maybe 2 friends. Okay, describe what they are. Well, they're exactly like me. They're this, da, 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 da. What are their hobbies? Da, 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 da. So what do you do on the weekends? Introverted stuff. So what do you do on holidays? Same things you've been doing every year. So what you're seeing is you see a person who did not realize that they dug themselves into a very lonely hole. And the older you get, that hole just gets deeper. And the hole just gets darker. And the hole just gets more and more lonely. And I had to affect them emotionally for them to realize they're cutting themselves off to life itself by being so resolute with their unwillingness to essentially become more emotionally connected. They could do it. They just didn't. They frankly never felt the pressure to do it because maybe previously they were an accountant or previously they were something that didn't require any emotional. They surrounded themselves with spreadsheets their whole lives. You guys get what I'm saying? So if you find yourself and you're in the overly analytical bucket, I'm here to tell you, you can break free of that, and you must break free of it. You don't have a choice. Julie, I'm picking on you a lot.
It's okay.
But you were like that.
Yeah. Well, I had to study it and overcome it, didn't I? And I've got another example coming up. So thank you for, yes, that comes out on a lot of coaching calls. That's our job as coaches, is to help you overcome the things that are in your way. I mean, first we have to detect them. And sometimes that's difficult to detect it on your own. You need somebody to look in that's an interested third party. Okay, so our next one is controlling nervous habits. And I'm going to use an example from my music training on this. Be aware and minimize nervous habits like fidgeting or tapping. Foot tapping is a big one. You guys have all seen this happen. You see it a lot at the airport, probably because people are nervous to fly. But if you haven't noticed somebody tapping their feet, you will after listening to this. So practice staying still and composed during important presentations. When I was in music school, they said, when you're sitting or standing, doesn't matter. You're sitting in your chair, you're standing up, pretend that your feet are the roots of a tree. A tree can't tap. It is anchored to the ground. It's almost a meditation that you do to settle yourself down. So you guys can use that.
But Julie, also nowadays, let's just be honest, involuntary body motions, especially your foot shaking or all these other types of things that people just do habitually, people are going to assume that you're using drugs.
Well, it could be. Yes, that's right.
Or you're overly caffeinated. And
you're hyped up.
And just so we're clear, there's nothing wrong with being overly caffeinated, listeners. I want to be really clear on that.
Just don't tap your foot over.
Yeah, just don't tap. But yeah, if you're around somebody and they're constantly fidgety, you're assuming that they're having some sort of, drug issue.
Sure.
I mean, isn't that
and
the
they may be, but you don't want to be misconstrued just because you're having a nervous tic. If you're not sure, then ask your friends, because they've probably noticed that about you.
I'll disagree with you on that one, my dear.
Why?
Because your friends aren't going to tell you because they're not going to want to offend you. And your friends probably have the same flaky habits too.
Well, it could be.
I'll tell you what will do it.
What?
Okay. Can I throw you
Film
on
yourself,
Can I throw you
suppose.
on the bonfire again?
Sure.
Okay. Well, all right. We'll see. We'll see if this gets me in trouble for the rest of the day. All right. So sometimes when I'm trying to show Julie about some way, like Julie will not, we've been married for 33 years. And so I can say, Julie, this is something like if we're at the gym, for example, and she's not doing something like I know she's doing something that's going to cause her physical harm, and she doesn't see it. What I'll do is I'll take a video of it.
Yeah.
I'll take a video of it and I'll show her. I'll actually say, like, we were walking around in Murphy where our cabin is, and she had this little tuft of, gray hair that was starting in the back of her head. She's, not a spring chicken, so she's allowed to have a tuft of gray hair. Well, I told her, she didn't believe me, so I took a picture and I showed it to her.
Lovely.
I'm getting a scowl right now.
Well, but that is actually, I listened to Dennis Prager was making the point about that being introspective, that you're either resistant to it, you're tired of hearing about it, you don't believe it, whatever the case may be, and that seeing it on film makes it different. His example was, there was a husband and a wife who had had many, many dinners together. And the man, they ate chicken a lot. And he would lick his fingers at the dinner table.
Oh, you told me it's so gross.
And the wife of 30 plus years was like, that's disgusting. Why do you do that? You do that at Thanksgiving. Don't do that.
But you missed a part.
But she filmed him and he saw it. And he's like, yeah, that really is disgusting. I can't believe I did that.
But she just accepted it. And she was, you told me, wasn't the daughter and the mom?
The daughter and the mom finally caught it on film.
Busted him, basically.
Yes.
So they weren't like saying you're a disgusting slob, but they sort of got used to it, almost accepted it. But then they took a video of it and showed it to him and immediately cracked. Well,
there's something about seeing it yourself.
Well, this is a little thing you and I do in coaching too, right? When somebody doesn't, we've told so many coaching stories about coaching clients who might be really good at skills, but really they don't, when they are in front of a prospect, they just fall apart.
That's true.
And if you can videotape them or have them videotape themselves, or at least listen to them prospecting, you as a disinterested third party can crack through it instantly. And that's what the video does.
Yeah.
So when you're watching a video of yourself, what you're doing is almost looking at somebody who's not, you're looking at a digital representation of you, but your brain perceives the information differently. So you can actually be, I'm not saying 100% objective, but a lot more objective.
That's why people don't like hearing themselves on the phone or a recording of their voice.
Yeah.
Because it seems foreign to them.
Yeah. Well, I mean, let's just be honest. We don't like listening to our podcast.
No, that's true too.
Though we do occasionally.
I've already invested in it.
Yeah.
All right. Do you want to do the last two, or do you want them to find them in the
let's do
notes?
the last two.
Okay. All right. So minimize, this is a Zoom specific one, minimize background distractions. And sometimes this can be very difficult. We have a loud kid and we have a very barky Frenchie who I mistakenly taught to speak. Okay, so ensure your background is clean and professional to help keep the focus on you. Tidy, neutral background. And Tim talked about lighting earlier. We put Max away when it's an important Zoom call so that he doesn't bark at every last thing. And, avoid having a cluttered or distracting background, which takes attention away from you. Use virtual backgrounds if necessary, or blur your background to maintain a professional appearance. We saw so much wackadoo during COVID with people's wine glasses on the table, and I don't even know what else that we had. But don't be distracting in your picture.
The virtual background thing is so important because just a whole bunch of reasons. I've been on Zooms before where it wasn't a virtual background, and my perception of the person completely changed because of what was going on in their actual environment.
Yes.
I mean, it was in some cases like completely changed. I thought the person was, let's just say professional and maybe, had their acts together, and here they are in their family rooms and they're clearly hoarders. I've had that happen probably 20 times in the past maybe 24 months, just doing Zooms. Mm-hmm. And that stuff really does like open your eyes because, you're going to say, well, if this person can't take care of their environment, chances are they're probably letting a lot of other aspects of their lives go.
And they knew they were going to be on camera.
And I shouldn't say this publicly, but guess what? Coaching clients, one of the first things we have all of our coaches do when you're in one-on-one coaching is they're going to ask you on the first coaching call to stand up and take a bunch of pictures of your work environment.
And they look at your social media too.
And they look at your social media because we're going to see what your environment is like. If your office and your home are a pigsty, chances are you don't think them as pigsties. Chances are you think, well, that's just, that's where I keep my piles of old, newspapers from 1927 or whatever. I mean, you don't realize that you have essentially slipped into a habitual lifestyle that's going to be detrimental for you ever to attract the people to you that you're going to want to have to become more successful.
Well, I mean, and you're not even necessarily going to know that you're being judged based on the background on your Zoom. It's just a subconscious thing. Gosh, they just didn't seem that professional. And that could just be dark lighting. It could be, too much paper on your desk. It could be you fidgeting around on camera. This is what Howard Brinton used to call moments of truth. I think that's a moment of truth for the modern era, right? So last but not least, use confident movement. Move with purpose and confidence, whether walking into a room or presenting. Walking briskly. Use good posture in a meeting that conveys authority. And avoid hesitant or erratic movements that can undermine your presence. Plan your movements to appear more deliberate and assured. If you're not somebody that talks with your hands and you start talking with your hands, maybe that's time to film something. Develop your own style that's not annoying, that is confident, and makes you feel good as well. I think there is an art and a craft to this, don't you?
Yeah, definitely. Well, whether it's virtual or otherwise, by looking someone in the eye, not stalker style, but looking someone in the eye and smiling and staying engaged with what they're saying and not being distracted by your devices, no matter what your age is, and then listening to what they're saying, avoiding the tendency to talk about yourself, which we didn't talk about today, but we talked a lot about this on our podcast before. Don't wait for them to stop talking and be breathlessly ready to tell them, your version of what they just said. Don't do stuff like that. Listen to what they said and then ask them questions. Not, maybe first the questions will feel contrived, but after a while you'll get better at it. And you use our forward, conversation outline, family, occupation, recreation, dreams. All of these little things, when they're reinforced with actual skill set with regards to real estate, will give you so much power in the marketplace you won't even believe it. What starts to happen is not only do you feel more confident, you're going to start realizing that real estate opportunity has always been around you at all times, no matter what the market conditions, the interest rates, all this other stuff that you thought was important isn't important. What was happening was because you were not confident, because a whole bunch of variety of reasons, skills being the easiest ones to solve and all these other things we talked about today being the second easiest. But when you're confident, you start naturally seeking out, some people call it the law of attraction. That's too woo-woo for me, but there is something to it. They'll start seeking out, or the things start seeking them out, opportunities for you to help people buy or sell real estate. That is what happens, but it's all part and parcel. So the most socially inept agent with the greatest skill set is not going to benefit from that. The most socially skilled agent with no skill set is not going to benefit like I just described. So you have to have both. That's what coaching is all about. This is not a lesson, or this is not a message for everybody, because not all of you are that serious or as serious as you need to be successful in this new market. There is going to be a massive, you want a prediction, I'll give it to you. In the next few years, there's going to be the world's biggest bifurcation, which means, essentially the splitting into two in the marketplace amongst agents. And they're going to be the skills-based agents and everybody else. There's no two ways about that. Everybody's going to be a social media influencer. Everybody's going to have a YouTube channel. Everyone's going to be all the things because of the fact that AI is going to make it so that stuff is oversaturated. It's going to become prolific. All the things that people have been teaching you or telling you are important aren't going to be important when everyone's doing it. You guys get it? The thing that you cannot fake, that AI will not be able to replace, is your skill set. And with the skill set, your mindset will be like you cannot imagine. Anything you'd like to say?
Well, I think you're right. You've got to put both sides of it together. The skill, some of what we talked about today was social skill. Mm-hmm. It's about paying attention and being present with who you're in front of. You have to combine that with skill. As you said, you can have all that going on, but not back it up with skill, and it won't work as well for you. And the opposite can be true. It's really both things have to happen at once. And we do work hard in coaching to bring those sides together.
We do. And this should be a great, I think, entry into this more research, more introspection about areas that you can improve. And the next natural step is obviously to join Premier Coaching. We talk a lot about this in Premier Coaching. One of the things in the first level of Premier Coaching is a personality test. So make sure you take that personality test when you land on the page. It's actually Jordan Peterson's personality test. And then take that one. I think you'll find that very illuminating at the very least. And just join Premier Coaching. Just go to premiercoaching.com, premiercoaching.com, or just scroll down below and click the link below. Have a fantastic day. We'll talk with you on the show tomorrow.